Okay, so I just demonstrated how you could take this data of third exam versus the final exam scores of students to see if there is a correlation. Um, and there is a linear pattern. And so we able to get a line of regression. And I did it with both of these calculators. What I would like to do next is to show you how to do this again using Google Sheets and Microsoft Excel. So I think the first thing that I will do is I'll do everything in Microsoft Excel first, and then I'll do Google Sheets second. So, you can skip through this video easier if you need to. So let me do Microsoft Excel first. So what you'll notice is that first I put in the two random variables. So I've got third exam scores and the final scores from the lecture notes. And I just kind of typed in these text labels. Okay. So you'll see here in the formula bar, all there is just text. All right. Okay. So the first thing we want is we want the slope. So what I would recommend that you do is that you go to the formulas menu and you look at this function library in the ribbon and click more functions, go to statistical, and the one we want is actually a function called slope. Right here. Okay, and what this slope function wants is it wants some inputs, and those inputs are in parentheses. And there's two inputs that it needs inside the parentheses, and each input is separated by a comma. So it wants the known y values, that'll be our final score, and then a comma, and then the known x values, which are going to be our third exam scores. Okay, so let me click that there. And so our y values, I'm just going to put the cursor here, and now I'm going to left click and drag on my y values, and then let go. And you can see it put in B12 or B2 to B12. B2 is the first cell, that was the one I clicked on, and then B12 is the last one. All right, now for the X values, I'm going to click here in this field, then come over here, click and drag to select all my data, and then I can click OK. Now, I think it's easier, especially if you're learning, to go to the formulas menu and look at the formula this way. Let me share something. So when you get good, you don't need to always go to this. So for example, if I knew the function, what I wanted was slope, I could have just hit equals and then started to type the word slope. Okay, and so you can see it kind of auto-populates the function that I started to type. So if I click that, if I double click it, this is another way to get to it. Okay, now it tells you what it needs, okay, but it gives you maybe a little less help in a way. Because remember when I looked at it up here under more functions, it brought up another window and it actually kind of showed me the calculation it came up with before I clicked OK. All right. So as you get better, you can just kind of do it this way too, and then put a comma, and now it wants the X values. So notice it bolded that. And I can put that, and now I've got to put a right parentheses in like that, and now I hit enter. See, and it gives me the same answer. So there's a couple ways you can go about using functions. The way that I'm telling you to do it by going to the formulas menu and look at the function library ribbon. That's maybe a little easier if you're starting out and learning. Okay, so y-intercept, again, formulas, more functions, statistical. This one I think is called intercept. Yeah. So all you have to do is kind of hold the cursor down on it for a second and it'll kind of come up with some help. So it wants the y values first and the x values second. So here, the y values are there. I'll click here and then click and drag for the x values and click OK. All right, so you can see that this slope and this y-intercept, is the slope and y-intercept that we had previously. Let me bring this up. So slope of 4.8 and some change, negative 173 and some change. That's what we're getting here. Okay, now we need the correlation coefficient. So again, we'll go under more functions, statistical, and I think that's called Correl. So I'll click that. Now array 1 is going to be our x values, and array 2 is going to be our y values. And you see it's kind of giving us a preview of what the answer is going to be. It's 0.663. So I'll click OK. And there it is. All right, now we also would like to graph this. So how do we graph it? So we can select the column heading as well as all of the data. So how I did that is I clicked and held the mouse button and then dragged over and let go. And now I want to go to the Insert menu over here to Charts. And there's this picture, which looks like a scatter plot. So I'll left click this downward toggle and then click Scatter. Left click on Scatter. All right. So here we have our scatter plot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm actually going to change a bunch of things to maybe make this a lot more presentable. Okay. So the first thing I want to do actually is I want to right click and choose Format Chart Area. Now it could be Format Chart Area, could be Format Plot Area, it could be Format Axis. I really don't care because what I want to do is I want to bring up these formatting options over here on the side. Okay, that's what I really care about right now, is just bringing up this extra toolbar here on the side. And so now when I click on anything, notice how the formatting options change depending on what I click on, right? Okay, so what I want to do is I want to click on just this outer border, and I want to take this outer border away. You can see there's a light gray line around the edge. So let's go ahead and take that off. So if I left click on that and under chart, so under Format Chart Area and Chart Options, I can go to Border and put no line. Okay, that will get rid of this outer edge, which we don't want. Okay, now the next thing we want to do is we want to make this graph so that it's 6 inches wide and 4 inches tall. So under Format Chart Area, we can come over here to Size and Properties, left click that, and here under Size, we can increase the width to 6 and increase the height to 4. And now let's lock the aspect ratio. So you'll notice that before, when I was resizing, it only changed the size in one dimension. Okay. Now, if I click lock aspect ratio, if I change the size of one side, it'll change the size of the other dimension at the same time. So it's locking this aspect ratio between width and height. Okay, so I'm going to bring this back up to being a 4:6. And another important thing with Microsoft Excel is that once you've made a graph, and if you end up deleting rows or changing their sizes, it'll actually change the size of the graph too. all right, which is really annoying. So what I would do is when you're here under size and properties, under the chart area format options, go under properties, okay, expand it if it's not expanded, and put don't move or size with cells. So what it'll do is it'll make this scatter plot independent of this worksheet down below. So you'll make changes to this worksheet and the size of this will not change. And that's what you want. Okay. So those two things have been changed. Okay, that's good. Now we actually do not want this title. Okay. Now I think older versions of Excel might not have had this little plus sign. So let me show you another way of getting to these options. All right. And that's to go over here to add chart element. So under add chart element, you're not only adding chart elements, but you can also remove them. So if we go here to chart title, which is what we're looking at, we can select none. And notice that when I select none, this chart title goes away. And that leaves us more room for our graph, which is what we want. We want to have more room to make our graph cleaner and easier to look at. All right. The other thing that's missing is our axis titles. Okay, so let's go over here to add chart element, go to axis title, and let's put primary horizontal. And then let's go to add chart title, axis title, and we'll put primary vertical. We'll turn that on as well. Okay, so you can see now we've got a horizontal axis and we have a vertical axis. So now I'm going to come down to this axis title. I'm going to double click it. And this was our third exam scores. So I'm going to say, I'm going to type in third exam score. And I'm going to put this in, you have to put the units. So I'm going to put points. And then over here on the vertical axis, I'm going to select all of that. And I'm going to type in final score. And that's also in points. If this had been a percentage, I would have put percent here in parentheses. Okay, so now we have our axes, but this font is just way too small. So let's left click on that and we'll go to home and let's change the font to Times New Roman. That's a pretty standard font. So let's go to Times New Roman. Let's make it bold. And I want to make this 18 point. And look, it's gray. I dislike that very much. Let's make it black. Okay. So let's do the same thing here. And I think, yeah, let's just click on it. Let's change it to Times New Roman, 18 point, bold, and make sure that it's black. All right, good. So if this axis is 18 point, we want these labels to be 16, just a little smaller. So let's change those to Times New Roman, 16. See, it makes it gray. I very much dislike that. I want it black. Let's make it bold so it's easy to read. All right, come over here to the side and again, Times New Roman, 16 point, bold. Let's make it black. There we go. All right, looking good. Next thing, let's change the plot area. Right, so let's left click at the plot area now, and let's look at our settings. So fill, we don't want to fill this with anything. Let's see, border, we want a border. So we want to put a border around the data area, around the plot area. So under border, I'm going to click solid line. I'm going to make it black. And let's make the width of it 2.5. Okay. That looks, strong, but not overly strong. All right, that looks good. What other options do we have? Okay, I think that's it for those options. Okay. Now let's look at these grid lines. Let's take these off. So I'm going to left click on one of these grid lines, and I'm just going to see it says major grid line. Well, I could click on it and I could click no line, but let me show you something. If I go to chart design up here and I go to add chart element, I can go to grid lines and say, oh, I can take the primary horizontal off. I can go to grid lines and put primary major vertical off. Yeah, I think that was the better way to do that there. All right, so now those are gone. Let's see, what else can we come back to that? Okay, we don't want data labels. We got that, we got that. Okay, we need some tick marks down here. So let's put in some tick marks. So I'm going to left click on 64, one of these numbers. And let's see here. Let's see, I think if I click on this axis options right here, okay, click on axis options. All right, so you can see right now it's putting the data between 64 and 76. If I wanted to change that, I could change it here. So for example, if I wanted to make it go from 60 to 80, I could do that. Okay, and it takes it off of auto. Okay, so if I wanted to have a little bit finer control over this, I could do it this way. All right. Um, and you can see here it's counting off by twos, right? 64, 66, 68. Under units and major, I could change that to by ones, and why not? It doesn't look too crowded. These numbers are not overlapping or too close to each other that it looks like one long drawn out number. That actually looks okay. And we can do the same thing here with this vertical axis. It's going from 0 to 250, and it's counting off by 50s. Um, let's see, we can make that go from maybe 0 to 220. How does that look? Not too bad. And maybe we could have this have a minimum of 80, something like that. Let's maybe make that 100. So what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to get this to maybe fill up this plot area a little bit better. All right, that looks good. And it's already spacing it out by 20s, and that looks pretty good. Um, we can have minor increments. Oh, we'll worry about that in a minute. Okay, now we want some tick marks on the outside. So if we go down, we can click on tick marks. And major tick marks we want to have on the outside. Okay. And we could put minor tick marks in here as well. So let's do that. We want those also to be on the outside. Okay, that looks good. But let's have our minor tick marks to where we only have one in between. So under minor, I am going to put 10. So the minor tick mark will be 10 above each major increment. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Now you may not be able to see that, so let me go over here to this paint bucket, which is the fill and line. And under line, let's change the color to black. And we want the width to be 2.5, just like the plot area. And you can see now it makes it much easier to see. Right? Okay. And let's do that here as well. So I'm going to click on the horizontal axis. Uh, Now we're under the fill and line axis options. And under the line options, under color, I'm going to make it black and make it 2.5 points. Okay, now notice they're not showing up because I have to come over here to axis options and come down to the tick marks and put major on the outside. Now I could do minor, but I think that's going to make it look too busy. And I'm already incrementing by 1. So I think that's good enough. So I'll leave it at that. All right, so things are looking pretty good. The next thing I want to do is I want to make these points a little bit bigger and black instead of blue. So if I left click on one, you'll notice it selects all the other ones. And I can come over here to this paint bucket, which is the fill and line options. And I can click on marker. So it has line options and marker options. So now expand marker options. It says built in. So if I click on built in, okay, it's looking at a circle, but I want to make that bigger. Maybe 9 point. Looks pretty good. Now, if I wanted to change the shape to a diamond, I could do that this way. If I want to change it to a triangle, I could do it that way. So there's all these different shapes you could choose. Let me leave it, and you choose a square. Let me leave it on a dot, okay, a round dot. And I'll go down one more. That looks a little too big. 8 point looks pretty good. Now I want to make this black, so I want to go to the fill color for the marker, and I'll change the color to black. And the border, I want no line. So the border is a line around the edge. So if I wanted to make this to be an open circle, I could change the border to a solid line, make it black and give it some thickness. And then I could make the fill color white. There, you see that? So I could do it that way too. And I'll leave it that way. I'll go ahead and leave it that way. No, I'll put it back the way I had it. Sorry. So I'll put it back. So under the marker options, the fill, I'll make that black. And for the border, I'll just put no line. Okay. That looks pretty sharp. Okay. The next thing we want to do is we want to put our line of regression in here. So what we want to do is with this selected, come up to Add Chart Element, again, which is under the Chart Design menu here at the top. And I want to click Add Chart Element. And under Trend Line, we'll do Linear. Okay, you can see it put it in there, but it's hard to see. So we'll left click on it. And now that gives us our trend line options. Now we'll do a couple of things since we're already in these trend line options here. I'm going to put display equation on chart. So you can see it just appeared right here. And I'm going to put display R squared value. Okay, so you'll notice that, let me go ahead and make this bigger. So with this text box selected, I'm going to come over to home. I'm going to make that Times New Roman. Let me see if I can make it 16 point and bold. Oh yeah, and black. There we go. Oops. Let me undo that. There we go. Let me take this and drag and just move that back over here, something like that. So you can see that this line of regression equation is the same one, is the same as what we calculated over here with the slope and the y-intercept, okay, being the same. The other thing we need to do now is just change the formatting of this line. So when we click on it, you can see we have these selection handles here on the ends, and it says Format Trend Line. You can now click on the paint bucket. We want it to be a solid line. We want it to be black. We'll go ahead and maybe make this 2-point, and under dash type, let's just choose this one and see how that looks. That looks good. Let's make the width a little bit more, maybe 2.5. Yeah, that looks all right. You could even go a little bit bigger. Yeah, 3-point. That looks pretty good. Okay. So what we've done is we've taken this, these two columns of data and, formatted a scatter plot with a line of regression, including the line of regression in it. We could put it at the top. We could kind of put it down here in the lower right if we want to. Position that anywhere you want. The last thing I would kind of do at this point would be to right-click this and put Save as Picture. And maybe save this. Let's see here. Save this to the temp directory here. Yeah. You can save it in a PNG file type or in a JPEG file type. It doesn't matter. Just choose one, and say something like this is, let's see here. Let's do maybe third exam versus final scatter plot line of regression. So give it a name that, is meaningful and click Save. So now that you've saved this, this is a JPEG, which is 6 inches wide, 4 inches tall, and it's ready to be imported into whatever Word document you want to put this in. Okay. So that's the instructions for doing all of this in Microsoft Excel. So we finished that. Let's flip over now to Google Sheets, and let's try and do as much as we can like that over here. So here in Google Sheets, just move this up a little bit. Okay. We want to, oh yeah, we need to calculate slope. Okay, so let's do that. So we want to insert a function, and we want to put in a statistical function. And so we want the slope function. So I'll scroll down to slope. Okay, it wants the y data. Now, if you don't see this, there might be a blue question mark off to the side. If you left click that, then it'll give you a little bit of help. So what it wants is it wants the y values first, then a comma, and then the x values. So here are my y values, and then I'll put a comma, and now it wants my x values. Now I can hit enter, and there's my slope. Okay, it's the same as what we got here in Microsoft Excel, and that was the same as the calculators. Okay, I don't want to do autofill, so I'm going to put reject suggestion. Now we want the y-intercept. So again, I'm going to put insert function statistical, and I think this one's called intercept. So I'm going to scroll up to this one called intercept. It says the y-intercept of the line derived via linear regression. So it wants the y data first, comma, then the x data. So here's the y data, comma, followed by the x data. Enter. There we go. Now we need the correlation coefficient. So we can go to insert, function, statistical, then correl will be correlation, just like that. It wants the y data first, comma, x data. So y data, comma, x data. Enter. All right. So we just really quickly, calculated the line of regression equation really fast, and we got the correlation coefficient really fast using Google Sheets. Okay, but what I would like to do is to show you how to make a graph, um, that maybe looks as close or as good as what we made here in Microsoft Excel. So to do that, we need to select these three, or I'm sorry, these two columns. Uh, we want to include the column labels that we typed in here at the top, and we want to insert a chart. Now, Google Sheets will try to guess what your chart is. If it maybe thought that you were trying to plot some kind of bar chart or histogram, here on the chart editor, here on the side, under chart type, you could choose different chart types. Okay. Um, and you can scroll down and there's more. So what we want is we want to scatter. All right. Um, and it already has put, the third exam access title down here and the final exam, I'm sorry, the final access title there. The only thing I'm going to add to this is I'm going to double click on that, just type score. And then in parentheses, you always want to put units down so it gives context to what these numbers represent. And this is going to be the final score. I want to put it the units. This is points. This is not a percentage, right? These are points. So I'm going to put that in. All right. Um, so actually, yeah, here we can change the size. So let's change the size of this title. So the horizontal axis title, that's what it's called. Let's see, what font? Okay, so I don't have the Times New Roman font on here. So I'll just go with Arial. I'll just leave it at its default. Okay, the font size, let's make it 18. And we'll make it bold. Looks like it's black already, but I'm just gonna hard code that to be black. I'm gonna come over here, click on the vertical axis. So now it says vertical axis title, final score, font size. I want that to be 18, bold. Let me make sure that that's black. Okay, that looks good. Now, under chart and axis titles, I want to click here and I want to go to chart title. And I don't want a chart title because you'll have a figure caption underneath. So this is not necessary. Okay, I would take that off. You can always put it back if you want. Okay, but what it does is it gives you more room for your data. All right. All right, and because we don't have a chart title, we don't need a subtitle. Okay. Um, Now let's see here. Chart style. Okay. So the chart editor has all these options that you can change in the chart. So when I clicked on these axis titles, it kind of jumped me right into the chart and axis titles options. But if I backtrack to the previous one, which is chart style, I want to get rid of this border color. Okay, I don't want a border around my graph. I want it to be white. Okay. Um, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the graph and okay, if the chart editor options comes off, like it did for me, just click these three vertical dots and put edit chart and you'll get it back. Okay, and we just need to go to customize chart style and let's change the border to be none. There we go. So chart border color, none. All right, that's good. Let's go to series. So series is actually our data points here. So let's change the color to black and fill colors black. Let's make the point size a little bit bigger. Now let's say I want it to be 8 point. It's like, well, do I have to choose 10? No. What we can do is we can just type it in and then click out. Oh, wait. Type it in and hit enter. There we go. So we can manually put in whatever we want. We don't have to go with these options, okay? Circle, we could change the shape to anything that we want, but I'm just going to go pentagon and hexagon. That's nice. I'm just going to go with a simple circle. Let's see here, left axis. Okay, so left axis and right axis um, will we'll just kind of move where these values are labeled on the left or the right. Um, but I'm just going to leave it on the left. So that's pretty standard. Now, format data point is if there was one point here you wanted formatted differently than the rest, then you could click add and click it, and it'll format it differently than the rest of them. That would become useful if you wanted to click on it and label it as an outlier. Then you could give it a different shape, right? So that's kind of how you could use that. Now, while we are here in these series options, let's go ahead and add a trend line. Okay, that's going to be our line of regression. And let's change the options there. Let's make it a line opacity of 100%, meaning we want it to be a fully solid line. We don't want it to be partially transparent. Line thickness, let's have a line thickness of 3. You can play around with this as much as you want. Let's see here. I'd like to change the line itself. Under label, let's put use equation. Okay, so you can see here it's giving us our line of regression equation up here. And let's put show r squared. I would really have liked to have made this line like a dashed line, but I don't see quite how I can do that. It's not giving me that option. Okay, so we'll leave that alone. All right, let's go to the legend options now. Now we don't actually want a legend. Let me see if I put none. Okay, it got rid of our equation. So instead of none, let's put it inside. And let's see, can I move that? There we go. Let me move that kind of down into the side here. And I think at this point, I can make it bigger. So let me make this 16 point bold, and we make sure it's black. There we go. All right. So we're done with our legend options. Let's go to horizontal axis. Okay, that's down here. So let's try and make it with the same values that I had down below. So I think I went from 64 to 76. So I'm going to make it a minimum value of 64 with a maximum value of 76, like that. And let's make those numbers bold. Let's make them 18 point, make them larger so they're easier to see. And we don't want the labels to be slanted. That's okay. All right, so I think that's about all we can do. Text color, I'll make sure that's black. Allow bounds to hide data. Nope, let's turn that off. Slant labels is if you just wanted to turn them on their edge. Okay, but we don't need to do that because these are small enough as it is. Okay, now let's go to vertical axis. And this vertical axis, let's go ahead and make the font size 18, bold, make sure it's black. Let's show the axis line right there. I wish we could make it thicker. Now minimum value, I had 100 to 220. So let's change the minimum value to 100 and the maximum value to 220. There we go. That kind of nicely kind of encapsulates our data there. Let me turn that off. Allow bounds to hide data. Why did it do that? Let me turn that back on. Okay, I don't know why it's doing that, but go ahead and leave that on. Guess let me turn it on here too. Not quite sure what that does. Okay, vertical axis. Okay. All of this looks okay because we're looking good there. Let's look at grid lines and ticks. So on the horizontal axis, let's step by every 1 unit. So notice it went from it went going by 2s to going by 1s because of this major step. Okay, I do not want major grid lines, but I want major tick marks. And I want the tick marks to be outside. Tick length, we can make that whatever we want. I'll just stay with auto for now. Let's change the thickness to 3. See how that looks. Okay, that looks good. And line color, just make sure that that's black. And we don't need any minor tick marks. Okay. All right, looks good. So now let's look at the horizontal axis, or the vertical axis. And okay, so here it's stepping by 20s. That's fine. Now we can put in minor points. So we can do minor points by 10s. Okay, so notice it kind of added an extra horizontal grid line. Okay, but we want to turn those off, both major and minor grid lines. Okay, those are off. But we want major and minor tick marks. Okay, the major tick mark, we want that to be on the outside. Length, we'll leave it auto. Line thickness, let's just type in 3. Line color, we'll make that black. Now let's put minor tick marks on. It looks like it's taking the same options. Let's maybe type in a 3 there, hit enter, make sure that that's locked in at black. Okay, so the only thing I want to do is it would be nice to be able to put a border around that. But as I click in here, it's not actually letting me do it. Yeah, I certainly don't want to put major grid lines on. Thought maybe I'd have a chance to change that. This is a little too close to the bottom. Let me move that up some. All right, so we have like fewer customization options here in Google Sheets, but this is the best we can do. I do prefer to make graphs in Microsoft Excel because you have more options. You can make it look a little more professional, a little cleaner, um, than you can here with Google Sheets. But hey, you work with what you got. So the last thing that we'll do is we'll save this as a JPEG or a PNG file. So what we'll do is we'll click these 3 dots here in the corner. We'll put download as a PNG. And I'm going to save this, on a directory on my computer. And so I'll give this something that makes sense. So this is going to be 3rd exam versus final This is a scatter plot with a line of regression. And then I'll hit save. So now this picture, um, this graph is now saved as a JPEG. And you know, there was one more thing that I wanted to change, but I don't actually see where I can do it. What I wanted to do is I wanted to make this 6 inches wide and 4 inches tall, but I'm not seeing the options to let me do that. You know, I could resize this bigger just by clicking and dragging here, but I'm not seeing an option to actually do this. Okay, so let's go ahead and end there. I did show you, how you can download this as a PNG file, and that's as far as we went also um, with the Microsoft Excel tutorial. All right, so let me know if you have any questions.